This is our crashed 2021 KTM 1290 Super Adventure R that we bought sight unseen on auction. On the auction ad, it was listed as a non-starter. However, in the last video, we did manage to get it to fire up. Unfortunately though, we discovered that it has a bent frame. So we tried our best to bend it straight. Today we're going to figure out if that worked, and if it did, we'll attempt to fix it properly. So after all the jumping on the bike and bending it out, we think that we've gotten this straight. If we stand over there, we can look and our mind plays tricks on us. We swear it's perfect, but it can't be sure. And the next step is to actually go ahead and weld the frame
I'm convinced it's straight.
So after a lot of trial and error, we think we figured out a way to validate that the frame is no longer bent. We started by making the bike as level as possible, measuring on a central point of the frame and zeroing this measurement with a digital angle finder. Then, by using the combination of a level, a string, a digital angle finder and a laser, which didn't show up well on camera, we checked level on the fork legs with the axle in and on both the triple clamp mounting surfaces. So, after trying to confirm straightness in multiple ways, we called it good and pushed the bike up the stairs into my workshop so that we could begin welding. It turns out that finding a piece of chromoly that has the same dimensions as the KTM frame is pretty tricky. However, thanks to bicycles, this stereo tube over here is exactly the same diameter as a KTM frame, except this one is made out of aluminium and this is out of chromoly because this is from a BMX. So we've cut it down and we've used the lathe to get perfect edges. As you can see, it looks great. We need to trim it down a little bit further, and then we're going to go ahead and actually TIG weld this into the frame. I'm going to tack it in now and hope for the best. Oh, come on. I know it's cowboy behavior welding this without a jig, but I feel like the frame didn't actually bend very much. So once the crumpled piece that was holding all the tension got removed, the rest of the metal just relaxed back into its original place. I'm also no professional welder, but I have welded a lot of random things before, and some of the most important things to look out for are heat and filler. With chromoly, I weld in short sections to try keep the heat down, as well as using lots of post-flow gas and filler rod to ensure good penetration. After welding, we had to prep for paint. So we took turns sanding this perfectly flat so that the repair would be completely invisible once it was painted. What are you doing down there? Building up the fitness. Looking pretty good. Now that the weld is almost perfectly flat, we're going to need to use some high quality, lightweight filler to fill in the final few imperfections so that we can primer and paint it. So I've actually never done this before, so I'm sure you can tell by my technique. So we're just going to lay it on and hope for the best. Nothing that a little bit of sanding and grinding can't do. Grinder and paint makes me the welder I ain't. We began by sanding the filler down with 400 grit sandpaper, followed up with 800 grit sandpaper to achieve the ideal finish. With the sanding complete, we moved on to priming the area in preparation for painting. Once the primer was applied and had dried properly, I took some Scotch-Brite pad and gave the area a final pass just to make sure it was completely ready for the factory orange paint. I tried to leave some space at the end of the primed area, hoping that the orange paint would blend in with the factory paint, but it was way too little and definitely didn't go to plan. So from here, it looks pretty good. When you get a bit closer, it's definitely quite obvious. Have managed to kind of blend this a little bit better, specifically around here and here. I think just a little bit of polishing will actually do it. So while we wait for this to dry, let's check on the forks to make sure that they're not bent. Forks are usually pretty tough, so I have high hopes for them being fine. We're going to start by rolling them along a flat surface to see if there's any run out. And it seems like both the forks are good, which is a relief. I'm now going to address the leaky seals by removing all the grime with the seal cleaner, and then next I'm going to tackle the black marks on the base of the fork legs. They seem to come off quite nicely with a little bit of brake cleaner. This section of the frame is actually quite bad. I'm going to see if I can polish through this. I think I managed to get most of it off. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at what we've done. So this completely sprayed. We've removed all the masking tape. The blending is pretty good. I'm still waiting for the paint to dry. I think it'll probably take like a few days to cure before we can really start to polish it and blend it. But aside from that, looking pretty good. Let's come around to the other side. Over here, there was that pretty big scuff, completely gone. All that's remaining is like an actual scratch over there, but I think that it's going to be covered by these side covers over here. So what next? Probably this pipe. We're going to need to build a new one of these, and I guess a wash, to be honest. Before we start assembling anything on this bike, it would be great to get all of this dust off. There's so much. So the bike is now washed and mended, and it's time to put it back together. Come have a look at our workmanship. So as I'm sure you remember, completely kinked in and broken before, and now brand new. But the next step is to put it back together the way that we took it apart. So I'm going to start off by peeling off these little water covers and putting the airbox back together. So this thing is a bit of a mission to get it back in. One thing you have to be very careful of is the O-rings from underneath these holes. They're kind of stuck in at the bottom at the moment, but they can easily drop out, so you have to watch them from down here. And then secondly, this in the front has to clip back in while the airbox moves down, and it's like rubber mounted. It's kind of tough. There we go. It's now clipped in place. Next, it's time for these stacks to go back in. Time for the lid to go back on. Connect this pipe down here. One radiator is on. Time for the second one. This thing is starting to look a bit like a bike again. So this was all going really, really smoothly until I couldn't figure out why this wouldn't go in, and realized that the side of this radiator is a little bit bent and the rivets have pulled out. So I guess you have to take this radiator off and somehow try and straighten that and put new rivets in. But aside from that, the next thing to go on is...
I swear Gobid dust is different.
It's different. Do you remember how this thing went together?
No, and the last time it fell off. Nice if it could fall back on.
There's a bolt. There's a tool.
Oh, so just mad Loctite on that.
Next is to try and connect up all these wires. Put on a few more of the remaining plastics.
Forgot this little guy.
What's that? Ooh, what is that? Is that a name? That is a name.
Jock.
Maybe we can find him. Maybe we can find the story of what happened to this bike. So with this name, I took to the internet to try and find the previous owner. And he was kind enough to tell us the story of what actually happened to this bike. Apparently, he was T-boned by a Bolt vehicle in a traffic circle. It does look like the bike came away better off though than the Bolt. But this explains a lot, specifically how the bike sustained a side impact rather than head-on, the scuffs on the fork leg, and why everything seemed to be damaged really low down, like the bash plate and the exhaust header. Unfortunately though, the previous owner was badly injured and has been off the bike for a couple of months as a result. So Jacques, if you're watching, we hope you're healing up well, and we hope to see you on the trails one day.
So I've clicked all of these together, but I think I routed them pretty poorly. Yes, I think everything's plugged in. Now to find some more plastics.
Where the fuel?
Seems like you need to somehow try and slide it in here by the radiator. This over here is what your key detects. So if you look inside, there's that little marking that says hold your key there. It's this little device at the back that picks it up and it takes it up to start. Oh, too big. So this is the headlight control module, controls the headlight, and it lives over here.
It's starting to look like something.
So before we get a little bit too far with the bike, I want to make sure that at least we've got the right indicators and that all the things are still plugged in. Oh, that's a good sign. Okay, let me go find the key. Okay, we've got the key. Look at that. Does the left indicator work?
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so too excited. We have to be able to determine if this thing starts before we tuck all these wires away. So let's go ahead and put the tank on. There you go, that seems right. Plug the fuel line back in. Okay, fuel pump just made pressure. Yo. Okay, that's not a good sign. Oh, it's flat. It still works. Amazing.
So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. We just received some goodies from KTM, which will be fitting in the next video, as well as going for our first ride. I also want to talk a little bit about how much this all cost and whether it was worth it, and if next time around we would do things differently. But stay tuned for that video.